All right, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Enough to Keep Going podcast for the week of April 23rd, 2023. This is episode 287. I am your host tonight, DBQ Hams. If you do not recognize my voice, I do not blame you. It has been a few weeks since I have been here. I have been out. I'd like to say I was globetrotting, but really I was just grinding away, earning a paycheck. But I can tell you, since the time I have last been here, my house has gone from one CRT TV to four, and they are now all linked up together, playing some 16 and 64-bit, 32-bit games. And it looks like I'm back in a Toys R Us demo kiosk here because we've got four TVs set up kind of side to side, top to bottom, playing some Tecmo Super Bowl and Mario 64 and NWO versus WCW. Oh, so that has kept me busy. But that is not why we're here tonight. We are here to talk about a number of new games that we are playing and the news of the week and some analysis around that and any other cleanup. But joining me, other than my little retro gaming rant, here is Game Logic. Game, how are you tonight?
I'm good, man. Glad to have you back. Different pairing tonight since Tao and I have been holding the fort for the last couple of weeks, so should be pretty interesting getting you back on the mic.
It is nice to be back. Yeah, I was out on vacation one week and then pulled into work the next 2 weeks. So, it does feel like it's been a while since I've been here. And even when I was here last, I'm pretty sure that it was just Tao and I. So you and I have not been here on the mic together for a while. And since that time, the Major League Baseball season has started, and it looks like you have picked up some MLB the Show 23 on PlayStation 5. I've been playing it on and off on Xbox through Game Pass and enjoying the March to October and some of the added pieces they've done there in terms of they've added a little bit more of the draft and scouting. And so in terms of some of the franchise stuff, it seems like they've added some pieces there. Doesn't look like Road to the Show is a whole lot different. Doesn't look like Diamond Dynasty. Although a couple weeks ago, I did talk about the storylines, right? The Negro League storylines. And so that really was the piece that stood out to me in terms of the narrative and the videos around it as well. But you've picked it up, and I haven't had a chance to talk to you about it. So what have you been playing within MLB The Show, and how do you feel about it?
I'm doing my usual standard, which is that I'm playing in franchise mode. We're going to talk about a few sports games tonight, and I am doing the same old thing that I've always done with them. Although it's the revisiting is a little different in each case. Specifically with MLB The Show, one of the things that's different this year is this is the first, like, it's always kind of nagged me a little bit that I bought the game almost every year, on Xbox or PlayStation 5 since it came to Xbox. But I've never really put the dedicated time into like a full season. But this year what I'm doing is it's in the same part of my rotation that Halo and Call of Duty is. So between Halo, Call of Duty, Major League Baseball, MLB The Show 23, and one other sports game we're going to talk about tonight. Those four are kind of in a split time rotation for the time that I allocate to, I guess, what is now either, multiplayer PvP or sports games. That pool is kind of split. So I've spent a lot of time with MLB The Show. I bought a physical copy for the PlayStation 5. And it's been some tough going. Yeah.
A physical copy in the year of 2023. What motivated you to do this? Is this like you're feeling the PlayStation Store is going to go away at some point? Where is the physical copy infamous here?
Part of it is, I bought the consoles at launch and then I got rid of them when I just kind of got a little wrapped around the axle and disgusted with, my fellow gamers and console gamers in particular. And then reacquire them after 6 months of laying off and feeling like, I'll go back. And then this time, so the first time around, I'd wound up with 2 digital versions. I had the PlayStation 5 digital, and I had the Xbox Series S, which at the time had worked out kind of nicely price-wise because, $100 off, $200 off a piece, all digital, which kind of fit my lifestyle. But when this time I was like, well, I'm definitely going to get the Series X this time around. And then the one that became just available as far as the PlayStation 5 was concerned was a version with the disk drive. So once I got them after a few weeks, I was like, oh, I have the ones with the disk drive now. And I was like, I feel kind of obligated to buy physical copies, right? To get some use. It started out with me buying Blu-ray DVDs, UHD, 4K DVDs. And then I was like, I should buy some physical games too. So now it's just like the Nintendo Switch. When a game is up in the queue for me to buy, I flip a coin and decide whether I'm doing digital or physical. So like I said, I bought a physical copy. My franchise season is, I'm playing the Washington Nationals. My first opening week series was against the Atlanta Braves, who are very near and dear to my heart. I commented on Twitter as I posted some game clips that I don't know that I've ever loved a team so much in real life and hated them so much in a video game. I beat them 7-2 in the opener, which I'm not sure how I did, but I beat them 7-2. Then I proceeded to lose 2 very super painful games in the remainder of the series. And they were painful because the second game went extra innings. It was 0-0 through the 9th. It remained 0-0 through the 14th inning.
Whoa, 14.
Yes. Yeah, it was a pitching duel. And I haven't been at 100% physically the last few weeks, and like I was literally I was staring at the screen. I was getting watery eyed. I was like, my vision was wavering. I was like, I just want this game to be over. And an interesting thing is, because I wanted kind of the purity of baseball, for my franchise mode, I turned off the start extra innings with a player on second base, which I guess is a new rule that got injected into Major League Baseball in the last few years. So I had to grind it out through those extra innings, and I was like my legs, like I was.
How long was that? Like, I can only imagine.
It was a couple hours
in a video game baseball, right? I mean, granted. Yeah. You didn't have really long innings because you had people either stranded on base or you had not a lot of hits, but that's a long stretch of time.
It is. And of course I sit there and watch through all the animations, and because I want the sports like experience. So I don't, shortcut through different things. So, and then the third game was the same way. It was 0-0 right until the top of the 9th. And then the Braves scored. And so that second game, they won 2-0. The third game, it was scoreless until the top of the 9th, and they scored 3 runs. And then I came up to bat, in the bottom of the 9th, but wasn't able to put anything on the board. So hey, that's baseball. So I'll keep my eye on it, see if, I started at a very low level, but I left dynamic, skill up on. So we'll just kind of see how that does. What I found in past years is I would put dynamic on, and then when it kind of settled out, I needed to lock it. Just because, if it continued to increase in difficulty, like that was, I was showing improvement just on luck, and it wasn't really a reason to scale the difficulty up because I would, go right back the same way. So we'll see how it goes. But presentation this year, as I told Tal, is top notch. I really love like the animations, and the graphics are good. I mentioned to him, which you play it more, so you'll appreciate. In the last years, we've talked about how Sometimes it's just smart not to buy MLB the Show for the first like 2 months, because it takes about 60 to 90 days for them to get patches out to really settle things out. Fielding, in past years, fielding has been horrible at launch. Base running has been horrible at launch or something, and with bugs and glitches. Ball flight, I remember one year was just horribly broken. I think there was a clip that I showed you where like the ball landed in the park but was recorded as a home run. But this year, surprisingly, things seem pretty sharp at launch. I haven't run across any glaring bugs. I did have to, again, I don't know the sport as well as I should, but I'm learning. I did not know about the 2 walks to the mound rule, which is if you go to the mound a second time, you have to swap a pitcher in. So the way the game does that, it's not very intuitive. It doesn't tell you anything. You hit walk to the mound and it pops you to the bullpen screen, and it doesn't allow you to back out. So I thought it was a bug. And fortunately, I Googled it and they said, no, that's the second walk to the mound rule. You have to put somebody in. So I learned that lesson and swapped the pitcher in. So having a great time, despite all the things.
I didn't realize that it locked you in the 2 walks to the mound. That's interesting. Yeah, I think I've had it run into put a player on second base playing extra innings in terms of that. I agree with you. Like, the presentation is just phenomenal. It is really sound. The play, the on the bases play, the at the bat play is really solid. It is, very enjoyable. I am a couple months into a March to October, right? Like, started it on opening day, kind of played around a little bit. And March to October, again, it's one of those where you basically play 1 or 2 games a series versus playing the entire. And you're only playing 3 to 4 innings because it'll start you toward the end, or it'll player lock you. And so you're only doing 1 player. But it makes it move a little faster. It also, listening to you talk about it, there have been times when it's worked great because it allows me to keep playing. And there's been times when I know that if I was playing the whole game, I would not be down 3-2 trying to come back in the 8th inning, right? Like, it would be closer. And so there is some artificiality, but it also adds some tension there as well. It's a really enjoyable, a really enjoyable game. A question for you. I'm playing when I play bases, I'm playing just on kind of the classic buttons mode. Do you play the trigger, or do you do the, where you got to move the stick to get it into the arrow spot?
You talking about for batting or for base throwing?
For base throwing, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'll just run through all of them just so we can say. So for pitching, I mentioned to Tao. I started with because I won't go through all the problems that the game does. I talked about all the deficiencies last week. I started with the metered pitching. Just couldn't lock that in. I went to the pinpoint pitching, which is the one where you take the stick and trace the arc of the pitch. And that actually I was getting the hang of, but that really makes incrementally, it may not seem like much, but that kind of makes each at pitch feel longer. And so it makes the game feel longer. I don't know if it actually is longer, but I was like, if I can't do this for 9 innings, I literally will, I will need a relief pitcher, somebody to come in and pick up the control because my thumbs will be tired. So eventually I went back to the classic pitching. For fielding, I originally started trying the metered fielding, right, where you get the green zone in there. And 60-70% of the time I was getting it, but the punishment for being out of that zone doesn't really, because I didn't do spring training. I went straight to regular season, and I was like, I'm not willing to lose games in the regular season as I'm trying to get the hang of this metered base throwing. So I eventually went back to classic, which just kind of uses the how long you hold the button down to, be how hard you throw to the base. And then largely bases, whether or not you throw successfully on really the skill of the person throwing the ball.
Of the player. Yep.
Yeah.
That's the way I play as well. It's just with buttons to preload and throw. Yep. Well, that'll be interesting to come back to in terms of the punishment for the inaccuracy, because I think as we come back around to some of our other sports games tonight, we'll come back to that as well. So I'm going to move on to our next game here, and I did a little bit of Disney Speedstorm this week. So Disney Speedstorm is the Game Loft game. It came out in early access this week. If you purchased a Founders Pack of some variety, this is the Game Loft game by the makers of the Asphalt series. In terms of driving, it is going to be a free-to-play game at some point in time. Right now, they're estimating that the free-to-play launch comes out the end of 23, early 24. And so it puts this game in a really interesting spot where you have to pay to play it. There are not microtransactions to unlock things like you would expect in a free-to-play game, but the economy is still there. So before I get into that, I want to say this game is fun. This game, as a kart racer, is fun. I have spent multiple nights up past 1 o'clock in the morning, like, I could play another race. So, what were you going to ask, Game?
Well, answer the burgeoning question, which is, how does this compare to Mario Kart?
Well, okay, so it's running I'm playing on PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series and PC all run at 60 frames per second. It feels incredibly smooth. Playing with my son and some of his friends, they feel like it doesn't feel as fast as like a 200cc Mario Kart. But I would say that it feels, in the moment gameplay, it feels faster because it's running pretty smooth.
So on console, there's no performance mode?
No, not at this point. There's no performance mode, no like graphics quality mode. It's just running in 60. So,
and on PC, it runs at 60, capped.
Yeah. I mean, the capped part is potentially problematic for some people, but in terms of playing it on a console, it plays, the on the track stuff is really fun. And I say this as somebody who enjoys Mario Kart, but also gets tired of Mario Kart. Like, I enjoy playing it, but I've also enjoyed, I enjoyed the Sonic racing games. I enjoy a good kart racer in a variety of capacities. And this is really fun. I think in some ways it doesn't feel as luck-based or cheap as Mario Kart does sometimes because of the items. I think the place where it does feel a little cheap is when you're playing the racer level. When you're playing, so the breakdown here is you've got a series of single player missions and tracks and kind of objectives through that. Some of them are just your base unlocks as you move through each of the different character or movie IPs that are unlocked. To start with, you get some Disney classics with Mickey, Donald, and Goofy, Mulan, and Pirates of the Caribbean, and The Jungle Book. And you move through some of those, and that all works pretty good. Then you move into, I should say, that all works pretty good until you hit a race where you have a recommended level cap. And because this is a free-to-play game, with all the natural trappings of a free-to-play game, you have your racer, and you have the ability to get shards of your racer to rank it up, right? That you feed back to get 10 shards of your racer brings it up another level, 20 brings it up 2 levels. Then you have a crew member, which adds a boost, kind of like an assist character, kind of a spirit character through Smash Brothers Brawl. And then you have multiple currencies that can give you those things as well. So the single player stuff works really well, and if you're kind of churning through, it works out okay in terms of when you hit a spot where you need to level up a little bit. What it doesn't do, it really kind of rewards you or pushes you to leveling up one character more than others, even if you have multiple ones unlocked, because you need to hit certain level caps in order to successfully complete certain missions. But I'm kind of chipping away at it, and I really haven't hit kind of a hard cap because I've been playing a mixture of individual single player stuff, playing some multiplayer stuff, and then playing some season stuff. Multiplayer stuff there are 2 modes here. There is a regulated mode, right? Like with a regulator on a car, so that everybody is coming in at the same level. No matter what your character level is, you're all coming in at the same level, which actually is a lot of fun as a multiplayer because it's about your skill as the combination of skill and dumb luck with the items you get versus playing a ranked mode where it also includes the level of your character. So if you've been grinding as somebody who's been playing and streaming this for 4 days in a row, coming into somebody who's just kind of coming in casually, there's a whole different level there. The matchmaking is pretty solid, so I haven't really gotten blown out in the ranked, but you definitely see that the level of your character makes a more significant difference there. So all those things factored in, there's a lot of different modes in terms of gameplay, and like any other free-to-play game experience, there's a battle pass included with it with daily and weekly missions. I'm kind of chuckling at myself describing this because it is at one time a really fun kart racer, and at the other time so bog standard of a mobile free-to-play game in terms of multiple currencies and daily quests and all those trappings kind of mushed together in this game. Like it plays really well and is a whole lot of fun. And if you're playing it casually, as I have been, I'll play for 15, 20 minutes and there's a lot to do. There's been a couple times when I've played for more than an hour because it's still really fun. But if you're playing local multiplayer, you have access to all the tracks. Right now, all the tracks and there's Hercules in there as well. And they do something, where they have the same track maybe has like 4 different layouts in terms of verticality and multiple routes. And so there's some options there. But when you're playing local multiplayer, you get access to all the tracks and all the racers, even if you haven't unlocked them. So as a local couch co-op piece, there's still a lot of game here that you don't have to necessarily have everybody unlocked to play locally, which is nice. But in terms of moving it and bringing it into an online play, it is very much kind of that, there is a structure here of what will be a free-to-play game with a lot of multiple currencies and things like that. So there's some balancing that needs to be done in terms of some rubber banding, some of the items. Some hit better than others, but there is a lot of nuance here. There's a lot more depth than I expected. So as a kart racer, Speedstorm is actually a whole lot of fun.
I mean, one of the things I'll mention is, I'm familiar with Gameloft because I spent, back when I was big on mobile gaming, I spent lots of time right on tablets and phones playing the Asphalt series, and it was one of the things that I used to do a lot of kind of high fidelity experimentation on low fidelity platforms with, as soon as controllers became available, as soon as you could use physical controls, all that stuff, I saw the evolution of mobile gaming into something that you could take more seriously. Gameloft, I've always felt, has done a good job of not putting the paywalls in as mandatory jumps. And one of the differences is, there are a lot of racing games that when you earn in-game currency to upgrade your car, they allow you to upgrade your car, but they put a time delay on it. They're like, oh, your mechanic is fitting the parts, right? So you can either proceed into the next race without the upgrades, which you're going to lose, or you can wait and come back in 20 minutes when the upgrade's done. Or you can pay money and accelerate the upgrade. Gameloft has never really done anything like that. Their games were primarily set up so that you could just grind the heck out of a game and earn the stuff as in-game currency, or you could buy extra skins and stuff, or you could buy in-game currency, right, and accelerate your forward path. So a few things I want to make sure of. So right now you don't feel there's any element of pay to win in the game?
No, because there's no way to put money in at this point. I mean, unless you purchase if you purchase the Ultimate Founders Pack for $70 and have unlocked all, so some of the single player missions and story modes require characters. So you have characters of 4 different classes in terms of a speedster, defender, trickster, and brawler. And then you also have characters from different IPs. And so some of your missions may be related to a certain driver class, and some of them are related to specific IPs. So if you've purchased the entire, the up package to have all 5 franchises at this point unlocked, you have access to everything. If not, there's a little bit of grinding, but it's not really pay to win in terms of there's not a way to put money into it yet at this point. And even when there becomes a way to put money into it, I can see the pay to win piece potentially being there in the ranked mode, but because you have all this other stuff in terms of single player content and in terms of the regulated where everybody's kind of, balanced out, then that pay to win is only going to get you so far. If you're really concerned about your ranked mode, and right now one of the criticisms is that there is more of a cap on coins that you can win, coins that you can earn on a daily and weekly basis in the regulated mode, right, where everybody's kind of leveled off. Those have a cap on them, where in the ranked mode there's not. So there is, but again, that's only unlocking certain things. So yeah, it is not the same as being able to kind of pay to just kind of level up because of where it's at right now. But if those mechanics, once this goes free to play, I think that definitely becomes a question, a concern.
So the shards that you mentioned then you just earn them by grinding.
Yeah, you are moving through, completing different missions within a race, like finishing third, finishing first, doing X number of takedowns or tricks throughout the game. Yep.
And then the legs on this game for battle passes. At this point, have they entirely held back on whole segments of IP? Are there no Star Wars characters and no MCU characters and things like that?
This is more, you could go for a decade before you even got to Star Wars and MCU, right? At this point, you have Disney, you have Mickey, Donald, and Goofy as a Disney classic. You have Baloo and Mowgli from Jungle Book. You have 2 characters from Mulan, 2 characters from Pirates of the Caribbean, and 2 characters from Hercules. And that's it. Then in the first battle pass, the first season pass, is focused on Monsters, Inc. And there are 4 racers coming from Monsters, Inc. in there as well. So yeah, I mean, if they really are gonna hit an IP every 2 months with a battle pass and maybe trickle some people out in between time, there is a lot of just Disney IP depth. Oh, there is Beauty and the Beast there as well. So yeah, there's a handful, but it is you get there's a lot that they haven't even touched yet. Like you're only hitting one Pixar game. Haven't touched a lot of the classics, even the '90s animation. You've only hit two of those at this point. So, and that's not even going off into the external Marvel properties. I mean, the external Disney properties. So, it definitely feels like there is this ability to, the Disney Infinity aspect of this has a lot more than 3 years of legs than Disney Infinity did.
Well, right, and then I mean they can dip into the. I mean, a lot of the properties that don't even go through people's minds are every Disney live action television show that that was never animated. So like the Descendants, I mean, you could just peel one of those off. Yeah,
but you get Hannah Montana, and you get all kinds of '90s, early 2000s Disney stuff in there too. Yeah, there is a ton of IP to potentially plumb before they even get to a Marvel and a Star Wars aspect.
And I would guess that they can dip in their I don't want to call it ownership, but their ability to live stream The Simpsons may also include a license where they could utilize them for these games too.
Yeah, I mean, when you say it that way, like there is a lot that this game could bring into it in terms of, what Smash Brothers Multiverses, the kind of brawler platform fighter aspect of mashup has been. That this could be that as well. And without the $10 price tag for every new character that the Toys to Life model tried to create.
Yeah, it's weird that is there not a version of this for the Switch?
Yeah, there is. There's the same versions. It's running at 30 frames per second. Yes.
Are they doing any idea? I mean, what a cash cow that would be if they did Amiibo for
that. I would say that is the Toys to Life model, right? Like, yeah, as somebody who has a box of Disney Infinity characters, yeah, that is a cash cow. Whether or not they could get people to buy back in after, well, at this point, it's almost been a decade since they tried it last. So it's a whole different generation of parents. So yeah, maybe. Like, I could see that this could very well turn into something. Like, if this has a lot of legs, you could have these characters out there with little racing carts, and why not? I think that it's a great use of the IP. It's a surprisingly fun kart racer. Some of the knocks I've seen online are that it is relatively generic in its carts at this point. Like, it does not have the personality of a Mario Kart or the personality of Sonic and Sega racing, where you had each different kart kind of matched its character. But I would say the one thing that it's doing, which I think is good both competitively and kind of longevity wise, is that the karts at this point have no abilities. They are purely cosmetic. And so, yeah, so they're all kind of generic at this point. That doesn't prevent them from selling skins down the road, right? Like, it keeps that door open. And I think that that's the piece, like, if they have strategically and smartly limited what this game is at this point when it has not fully launched, but the gameplay aspect of it is really enjoyable. I think my challenge will be knowing how many layers of kind of mobile game-ness is there. Like,
gotcha game mechanics.
Yeah, right. It is like I'm earning these currencies, and I need 10 shards of this character to unlock it, but I only get that through a gotcha mechanic, and so maybe I'll get that character. But at the same time, just racing for 10 minutes is a lot of fun. Like, I think that's the distinction here is like if I don't get wrapped up in trying to unlock everything and just enjoy what I have, I'll be playing this for a while. And again, as a parent, the fact that it does unlock everything for local multiplayer makes this kind of convenient of, just the other day, my son had a friend over and we were all able to sit down and play together because of the local multiplayer stuff. So it doesn't kind of lock that behind any type of paywall either. Hey, that's a lot of Disney Speedstorm, and I'll probably be talking more about it as there are updates that come through, but chances are I'll just be kind of chipping away at it. But in the true fashion of a mashup between mobile and console gaming, we've got one of our biggest news stories this week. Game Logic, do you want to take this one here? That last week we had some rumors, speculation, unconfirmed reports that Sega was going to purchase Rovio, the maker of Angry Birds. And this week, we have some confirmation from Sega that is actually true, along with a price tag.
Yeah, so this story sourced from IGN by Ryan Dinsdale. Sega has confirmed it's set to purchase Angry Birds developer Rovio for $775 million, following reports of a potential deal earlier in April. As reported by Polygon, the Sonic the Hedgehog publisher confirmed the deal on April 17th, and Rovio's board and shareholders have already approved it too. Acquisition expected to go through by the end of September. Yeah, I think so. A couple things. So there's a Sega fan who is a mutual of mine on Twitter and mentioned that apparently Sonic the Hedgehog Mobile does really big numbers. So I was surprised by that. So this synergy kind of makes
like
sense.
The Sonic Dash game?
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm
it's been around for a couple of years. But.
Yeah. So there's that. I mean, this price tag really isn't that big in a year where people are chucking around $7 billion, $8 billion, $70 billion to acquire publishers. The thing that's interesting, Rovio has most recently been in the headlines because there have been some unique business dynamics to their success. I mean, they're a classic story of a startup company, this time incidentally in the gaming industry, who's been damaged by their own early success. And so where their first game was so successful that their follow-up games have struggled because one of the things they compete with is against the first game. And so they have done things like gone in and kind of handicapped or nerfed, different elements of progression and different business models in later games to push people, or stopped investing in a later game that they've brought out, or taken things out of various games. So, it's just the other month, right? There was a news story of them pulling the full price or the single purchase games from their kind of classic Angry Birds 2, and moving it into the free to play with microtransactions. Yep. So, it's just, the original Angry Birds was just so more transparent, I think, just in kind of the way you paid in to the model and got access to additional stuff. I think they've pulled the Star Wars variant of Angry Birds. Yeah, so it's
I think that was a license piece that came up a while back.
Yeah, it's just a business that is really, while they had a great lightning in a bottle idea, the problem is that for that shop where they have not heavily diversified and just gone in a completely different direction in terms of IP that they farmed and what they're developing, the problem is that the things that they have developed lend themselves very highly to cannibalization across their product line. And so it's going to be interesting to see them pull into Sega. The curiosity is, do do they go to work on Sega mobile stuff, or does Sega try and piggyback and benefit off of Angry Birds, or exactly how is that dynamic going to work out? When we go back to the game you were talking about, right, with Gameloft, what I've always been very curious about with Gameloft is they are absolutely probably one of the most successful mobile companies out there as far as a development house, right? When you look at, I think of King and some of the other developers more so as publishers, but when you look at Gameloft as a developer, they seem to be incredibly successful. And I've always wondered if they were going to platform off of their success in mobile to go into full-scale console PC gaming. And a lot of their games like Asphalt, because of the way Windows works, you can buy Asphalt in the Windows Store and play it on Windows. It's not always necessarily a great viable option to Forza, right? Motorsport or something of that scale. But, this will be interesting, like I said, to see Rovio fold in, and then do they then go, again, platform off of their success in mobile to be put to work by Sega on full-blown console or PC titles?
Yeah, I think that this is really interesting to see where this goes in terms of who leverages who. Like, Rovio definitely has the mobile pieces there, but I think like so much in mobile, it's so easy to get not only cannibalized by your own products, but spun off and copied and iterated on from quick also rans. Like, Angry Birds was a great physics game with a cute little skin on top of it, and it doesn't take too much to kind of combine that with other things. And so we've seen that, we've seen different ways, but this is also a space where the simpler days of mobile from the early 2010s, right? Where you could pay 99 cents or even $2.99 and unlock the full game versus, $5 or $4.99 for a booster pass and $9.99 for 1 month to keep earning extra coins as you go through, right? Like, I could see that both of these could easily be, they could benefit from each other. I think the snarkiness in me says, I didn't know that Sega had 1 billion just sitting around able to buy something. So, but yes, I think that this could be an interesting partnering.
It might be Sonic the Hedgehog the movie cash. 2 successful sequels that surprised the heck out of everyone.
That's a good point. That's a real good point, right? Like, that definitely could be part of it. And also, I mean, the Angry Birds license had a number of successful movies in the 2000s, in the 2010s. So the way to kind of combine that, and that still is an IP that potentially has some legs, or even if it doesn't have some legs, in 10 years from now it's going to have some nostalgia that they can come back around to. So I could see the longevity of that here as well. So let's move into another acquisition, and this one I had to do a little bit of digging on because I don't know that I'd read about this, but I don't know that I could place my finger on who this affects. And so this is the story coming out of the game industry. This your article has us coming from Game Informer in terms of PlayStation acquiring Firewalk Studios. Their multiplayer development team includes some people from Bungie, who you get Ellis on there from a Bungie creative. But what highlighted this to you, Game Logic?
I just came across this kind of in my weekly rundown. Obviously, it's a big story on Twitter. I guess interestingly enough, I wrote a longer Twitter thread today about consolidation because, man, there is, and now I'm forgetting it, but I'll remember it hopefully here shortly. There is another, nope. There's another acquisition that just went down this weekend as well. And I mentioned, again, wrote a lengthy thing on Twitter about, people say that there is no concern about industry consolidation. And a lot of times what people point to is they point to this, oh, we'll see, X number of developers just left Playground Studios. And so that's two more AAA studios right there. And part of what I explain to people is like, okay, human beings departing and starting a studio does not make a studio AAA. What makes a studio AAA is, first of all, more people, an actual development team, not just the founders, but also an infusion of money, cash, and or a contract. And so if Sony comes along and hires your studio or contracts your studio to build a AAA game and fronts the funding for you, now you're a AAA studio. But the simple departure from large publisher X, such as Microsoft, to starting a studio and branding yourself as AAA doesn't make you a AAA studio. And so one of the other things that I wrote about in this thread, and this is going to sound, I didn't realize until after I wrote the thread, but when I posted it and then reread through it, I was like, this sounds a lot like the Swamp Castle bit from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And I said, how many times has a developer, do you hear developers leave a studio and start a new AAA studio, and how many years does it take before they ever actually ship their first game? How many times do they go out of business before they ever ship their first game? That game gets canceled or delayed, or, like I said, it's years and years and years before they ever get it out. How many times in the course of making that game do they get reacquired by another large third-party publisher or platform owner? And how many times do they finally get their game out? It doesn't achieve the commercial success that it needs to, and then they either go out of business thereafter because they can't keep going on and they're not bringing in enough cash, or they wind up getting acquired by a third-party publisher or a platform owner because the first game sent them broke, and the only way for them to continue making games is to put themselves up for sale. And so, this notion that the gaming industry is this land of opportunity, I think is a lot overblown and given much more weight than it actually is. Again, I go back and I point to the fact that, roughly 10 companies make up 10 companies earn 65% of the revenue out of the gaming industry. That means that the other number of companies that there are, and let's face it, every single developer shop calls himself a company. There are 10,000 games published to Steam every year. Not many studios ship more than one game in a year. So let's say that's somewhere around 5,000 other companies. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's just say that each one ships 2 games a year. That's like 5,000 companies. 10 of them make 65% of the revenue. That means the other 49.90, right, have 35% of the revenue to atomize and spread amongst themselves. It's probably not 5,000 developers, but it's some pretty large number. There are 200 development shops in Embracer.
2 games a year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So, this whole notion that, people will just walk away and find a new job, or people will just walk away and start a new studio, I think undermines the real threat that industry consolidation is presenting as it continues to evolve in that way. There's not too much to this article. PlayStation has been working with Firewalk Studios and I'm pretty sure that they provided the funding for them to work on the multiplayer game that they've been working on. They've had a close relationship. This is just like and I can't remember the names of the companies, but this is just like, I think there were some other Destiny and Bungie guys who started a company that they bought last year, and the Jade Raymond company that they bought. It's, not entirely different from their relationship with Insomniac, right? It always starts out with them being a third-party developer / publisher and having a strong relationship with Sony.
Did the same with Aspire?
Yeah.
That was doing their PC ports for multiple Sony first-party games, and then they purchased them. You demonstrate, and this is not that unique. Nintendo has done the same thing, right? You're demonstrating that you can work together in a what we would have called a second party capacity at one point in time, and produce a product high quality and within the windows of time, and it allows you to get picked up. But yeah, I think in that analysis, that is the most surprising to me, is that 10 companies only make up 65%. I could see 10 companies making up 80%, and the scraps being made up by all the others, right? And for those small independent studios that, you're getting a fraction of a percent, and that is still a profit for you from what a AAA and the overhead and the marketing and all that comes into play as well. All right, let's move on to our final story. And this one is not quite as serious as the last two, but as someone who has watched the Mario movie, someone who got a number of the references here, we get the news story that Nintendo has acknowledged a Mario character name change for Japan. So, Game Logic, you put this one in here. This one's coming over from Eurogamer. Do you want to wrap us through here?
Yep, the story posted by Tom Phillips. As DBQ mentioned, Nintendo acknowledges Mario character name change for Japan. The article reads, a Mario character who appears in the new Super Mario Bros. Movie will be renamed in Japan, Nintendo has confirmed. Mario and Luigi's former boss Spike appears in the film as a stern foreman and rival for the brothers' new firm. The character is a deep cut from Mario canon and originally appeared in the NES and arcade game Wrecking Crew back in the 80s. What you might not know is that character was apparently named Blackie, which, you know, obviously, as it sounds, would not fly in 2023. And so Nintendo is thankfully renaming the character to Spike. Obviously, a move that they saw fit to do before the character was included in the movie. And now they're just extrapolating that change through the, I guess, whatever IP may follow hereafter. So, you know, good move.
Right. So this is.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that he was Spike in Wrecking Crew when it released in America, but back in the 80s, it was obviously the more problematic name in Japanese markets. Yeah.
Yeah, where it may not have come across as offensive, or at least maybe just, may just not have been acknowledged as such in the Japanese culture, which is fine. Look, it's always good for mankind to evolve forward. You know, Gene Roddenberry, great eagle of the galaxy, you know, all the fine things that he did for society and culture by writing the fiction and directing the fiction that he wrote. You know, it's good to see things progress there, because then hopefully they show examples to progress forward. As someone who participated in a rant on another podcast this morning, addressing some of the bad actor behavior by the gaming community on Twitter, where human beings have not evolved past our Cro-Magnon beginnings. So it's good, and it's not funny, but it's a curiosity to find in a company like Nintendo's background. Again, with their roots in Japanese culture, I could see how this kind of didn't pop on somebody's radar earlier. But by the same token, for a company who is so oriented around being family friendly, it's interesting to find that there was, just a little piece of lint, back in the IP footlocker that they needed to clean up. So, glad they're taking care of it and moving forward.
Exactly. Well said. And unfortunately, accurately said about humanity and our ability to be hurtful to each other in the process of pushing ourselves forward. So, moving on from there, this past week I have been playing some Madden. I am in year 6 of a franchise. Just finished up the off season and started another season. But Game Logic, you fired up some Madden 23 as well. So I know that I have talked about it here and there on the podcast because I have been playing it since the NFL season. But what got you diving into Madden this time?
Well, first I want to mention a comment in the chat. Paul's Gaming Live says, you either die a hero or live long enough to see yourself become the property of Tencent. So
I don't know. I'm holding out for Embracer Group. So
so what got me to jump into the Madden 23 pool, you ask? Game Pass, my friend, Game Pass. And so, it's on my rotation list to periodically, dip the soup ladle into the Game Pass bucket and, make sure that I'm, gaining some value. I've also been playing Need for Speed Remastered, this past month, which I also have been playing via Game Pass. But there's a lot of stuff in there. You often forget about it, and you often forget that the EA Play stuff is in there. It's no small value to be playing the newest version of Madden, which is a $70 game, for the price that you're paying for the subscription. So, good deal, brokered by Microsoft with EA Play. I have not played Madden since I think 2004. I think you've heard the vaunted story of my franchise league where I started off in Philadelphia, I think, and then was let go of Philadelphia and took up roots in Tampa Bay, where in Philadelphia I had recruited a new quarterback, during the off season, shenanigans that you do in Madden. And that quarterback actually followed me down to Tampa Bay, and we actually became a Super Bowl winning team. And so again, I
love like the sports franchise narrative that we can create, right? Whether it's MLB, whether it's NBA, whether it's Madden, like that narrative of, oh, I drafted this guy and then I moved over, but we traded for him and he took me to the trophy.
And this is the thing, right? Look, there's much ado about the Sony, near linear wide path, and Swiss, who's part of the show, but now is on a hiatus, and pops by every fourth episode or so. He talks about how that near linear wide path cinematic narrative driven thing appeals to him, and I find those games fun and enjoyable. But what I find most enjoyable are games where I have the provenance to tell my own story, right? It's one of the reasons why I like Destiny 2 so much. It's one of the reasons why I like Sid Meier's Pirates so much. These games that give unto you the right to kind of some latitude to write your own story. And we often talk about too about games back in the 80s. And look, I'm not a huge games were so much better back then. I'm sorry, no, games are better now, 40 years later with newer technology. I'll take a high shader count, ray traced, right, graphic presentation over pixel bit sprites. But there was something to be said about how back then those stories didn't fill in all the gaps and fill in all the holes. They left a large swath of the surface area to be filled by your own imagination. And I really enjoy games like that. And that's one of the reasons why I am, allowing MLB and Madden to potentially occupy a lot of the time, or some of the time, that I've been giving over to Halo Infinite and Call of Duty, to get back to that feeling of like a franchise season and multiple seasons and that story that unfolds. So I was mentioning to a friend of mine who saw me post a game clip and said, "Hey, wait a minute, are you a Kansas City Chiefs fan? I swore you were an Atlanta Falcons fan." And I said, "Look, I moved around a lot when I was a kid. I don't really have a hometown, so to speak. I was attracted to teams based on players and not necessarily based on, where I lived." Probably one of the first football games, I think the first football game that I listened to, I didn't even watch it on TV. I listened to the radio cast of, I can't remember what Super Bowl number it was, but it was the San Francisco 49ers, and it was Joe Montana, and I fell in love with Joe Montana. And then I started watching football. I followed his career through the 49ers right up until we started sliding into the Steve Young times, right? And he got injured, and I learned right then was when I kind of really started learning about the business of football. And long before I started commenting on the business of games, I talked a lot about the business of football. And I talked about how, look, the 49ers are a business. Joe Montana was at a certain point. He's a great player, maybe one of the greatest quarterbacks ever, but blah, blah, blah. So I then fell in love with Kansas City. Joe Montana.
Sure, because that's where Montana went.
That's Joe Montana got picked up on free agency in the same year that he gets picked up by Marcus Allen. Same year as they pick up Marcus Allen coming over from the Oakland Raiders at the time. All the controversy with Al Davis. So you get Montana, you get Allen, you get one of the greatest O-lines in history. You get Dave Zott, Joe Valerio, Will Shields. You get the great Derek Thomas and Neil. I can't remember Neil, or maybe Neil was his last name. Neil Smith. on defense. You get Troy Bayless in the secondary. You just have this assembly of like one of the most talented teams in my mind, right? In all of history, led by the great Joe Montana. And so I became a Kansas City Chiefs fan. And so I'm playing the Kansas City Chiefs. Look, being a Kansas City Chiefs fan was a hard life. So
it was, right? I mean, other than the last few years, there was a wide window in there between Joe Montana and Pat Mahomes.
Well, you had the Trent Green years, and then and you had. And the problem with the Chiefs is you've always had all of this talent and then like an inability to just like put it all together, or just an inability to carry it over that last 5 yards. So at any rate, that's football. Video games. So I'm playing the Kansas City Chiefs. And it's good because, like I said, I haven't played really Madden beyond like an exhibition game since 2004. I kind of dropped off of it in the 360 era. And it ain't your daddy's Madden anymore, right? So there's some learning curve. I need to change the way that I used to call plays. I just there's some different things that I need to do. Some additional thought, because quite honestly, Madden, I don't know that Madden was really that much of a thinking game before. And so there's a little more thought to put into it these days, and that's fine. The gameplay is great, animations are great. It's got the problems you've talked about them before, how there's legacy problems that still kind of carry on to this day. But I'm having a great time playing it. It's really weird. The one thing I really want to learn how to do is, I guess that 30 play coach's playbook that you walk into the game with, I guess that's like through some learned diagnostic algorithm based on your play call and what strategies you pick. Like, I guess there's not a way to kind of go in, because I see that you have a larger playbook of like 270 plays, but I guess you can't manually go in there and check and pull there, which is fine.
Yeah, in the coach's suggestions aspect of it, yeah. Like, I use coach's suggestions on defense to kind of give me some samples of stuff to pick through, unless I'm really in a situational spot. But on offense, I'll always just go into formation and choose my formations based on what I know that I want to run, based on what my character loadouts are. Yeah, I mean, this is the benefit of playing multiple Madden in a row, playing probably 15 franchises now at this point, a year's a franchise. Like, you start to learn, and then you also notice like certain sets the computer struggles with versus others, and from year to year, sometimes those change, sometimes they don't. But yeah, it is. I completely agree with you. As somebody who just traded away my award-winning quarterback from the year before, 2 years ago he won the Super Bowl and the MVP. Last year he finished second in the MVP hunt and lost in the NFC Championship after throwing 4 interceptions. So I traded him away for the second-year quarterback who's been backup to him. All right. And so now there's this whole other narrative going on in my head around, this new quarterback and the interception I threw because he's got low accuracy compared to what I was used to playing with. And so I have to relearn, but it creates a good challenge, but it is kind of a player-controlled challenge. Like, if I wouldn't have done that, I could have just kept going, but it adds a whole nother layer of depth that is kind of at my own whims.
Yeah, and so and that's exactly what I'm missing, right? What I'm missing when we talked about MLB the Show, the difference with that game is, I kind of mentioned it jokingly, but I have bought it every year. And I haven't played it as much, but I've seen the progression, right? When you hear me talk about F1, you'll hear me talk about F1 back to 2011, and I can talk you through the progression of that series. But what I'm missing is the 19 years of context. As this thing. So now, players have progression, and you pick training each week, and that impacts who can level up in what area. And there's game focus that you pick and game strategy, and then you get to shift game strategy at the half. So there's a lot of additional stuff, which I think is good, because I feel like there's more of a coaching element in the game that you actuate upon than just playing the avatars on the field. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, I'm having a good time with it, and we will see how the how the season progresses. One little nit that I'll mention that I didn't particularly care for is when you initially bring the game up to set it up, it gives you an option to put it in performance or quality mode. And again, I'm playing this on the Xbox. And if I didn't mention, so I'm playing MLB the Show on the PlayStation 5. I'm playing Madden 23 on the Xbox Series X. It gives you the option to put it in performance or quality mode, and I set it for quality mode, but when I started my franchise, it was not set for quality mode. I just happened to be digging through the menus and saw that it had reverted back to performance mode, which that's fine if you, again, we talked a lot last week about how one of the things that I find lacking in MLB The Show is how there are settings that are linked to your profile, there are settings that are linked to your franchise, and that's not transparent or spoken to you or told to you which ones go where. And so as you start new things over, you're not, or blow a file away, you're not really clear what settings, right, got reset to default and which ones didn't. That pitching style was one of them, right? I changed the pitching style thinking that it was linked to my profile, but when I started my franchise season over, I kept going into the beginning of the game and it kept resetting to default, right, and metered pitching. With Madden, that was one particular. Everything else I didn't have any problems with, but that was one that I caught that just kind of was a fly in the ointment that I felt like should be improved upon, or it shouldn't revert. If they tell you, if they prompt you to set it up right when you're setting the game up.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, keep those settings at the universal level. Let's move. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, one comment in chat. How would you feel if they dropped the Madden name? We have that right now with EA dropping the FIFA name.
I'll say, as somebody who has played Madden since the Genesis N64, and Super Nintendo era, that's perfectly fine. Right? I think, like, if they stop the Madden name after this game, I think that's actually great. Like, the way you load up the screen, this is all kind of like a send-off to John Madden. Like, yeah, let's go ahead and let's name it NFL. That's perfectly fine. Like FIFA does, NBA 2K doesn't need Michael Jordan's name attached to it, or Bulls versus Lakers, or Lakers versus Celtics, however far back you want to go, right? Like, I think FIFA, EA's football club is going to be just as successful because it's still the same core game there. I say that acknowledging completely how sometimes broken and legacy problems there are within the Madden game, that changing the name is not necessarily going to fix some of the undergirding of that code.
I'm going to actually express a different perspective, and it may just be because of a lot of the things I talked about before, where I do have a point in my life where I was a big video gamer, but I allowed time to be occupied by sports, and then there was a point where that came to a stop because I wanted to allocate more time to video gaming. So there's a nostalgia that's caught up with that. And since I just started playing Madden, I just went through that opening scene where Madden comes up on the screen and it says thank you.
It's a good one.
And then I just have all those years of watching Monday Night Football, and so I'm coming off that nostalgia and those feelings of John Madden and what he meant to the game of football. And for me, and because I'm also conflating into this what kind of company EA is, so I feel like if EA dropped the Madden name, it would be to not have to pay the Madden family for the use of Madden's name. And I was like, let's not be that penny pinching. Let's let the Madden name stick for a few years. Maybe when the consoles move to the next generation, we could drop the name. But let's honor the man's legacy for a little longer.
I respect that very much so, but you're right. Like, that is a heartstringer type of opening, right? Where you get the multiple kind of screens of some of the broadcasts and some of the classic Maddens, even the original box that's there, right? Like, yeah, it's some nice heartstrings. All right, let's move on from one Game Pass game to another. as I was waiting for my Madden franchise to advance, had some time to play some Minecraft Legends. So this is the Minecraft Legends launched this week. This is the, I guess it's kind of an RTS, kind of Pikmin-like in terms of a Minecraft strategy game. I don't even know how to unpack this one. I guess what I'll say is I had a lot more fun with this than I expected. I thought I was going to give this a try, and 2 hours later, I was still playing. I think that I say this as someone who doesn't have a lot of experience or emotional heartstrings, as we were just talking about with Madden, right? Attached to the Minecraft IP. Um, you know, I had to retrain myself that I have to use the bumpers to move across the menu bar to select different items in like I would if I was building in a regular Minecraft game. Like I respect all that Minecraft has done. I have just not played it other than a cursory piece here and there with my kids. So I come into this without kind of the emotional connection to all the characters and imagery around Minecraft. That said, it's a whole lot of fun. It is, it plays on a controller. It is not quite. I kind of want to try it on PC to see if I can do the, click and drag hotkey aspect of an RTS. One of the challenges on a controller is selecting some of your characters in the heat of a battle where you have 20 different characters and they all may, you've got 5 archers and 5 melee ones and a couple healers, and you may want to select only certain ones to move in a direction. There are kind of button combos for that, like a trigger and then a button press that can select certain things, so there are ways around that. But as somebody who has played mainly RTSs on a PC, right? You're used to, I want to click and drag, I want to select, I want to be able to double click and grab all the units of this type and move them to a certain spot. But at the same time, it's really functional and it is satisfying. It kind of moves you, the first hour or so kind of moves you through your main objectives of a little bit of RTS, a little bit of resource gathering, which makes a whole lot of sense from a Minecraft IP, right? Like that is, you need to be resource gathering in order to be crafting. And so if you can be resource gathering without having to stand there and chop with an axe, but send a couple other units to collect wood or to collect iron, that's the best kind of resource gathering in my book. And you end up it has those same kind of trappings that you would expect in an RTS, that you've got wood and stone and iron. You start to get some of your other Minecraft, like diamond and ether, you get some of those other pieces. And that you're building different unit types, and as you're sending them to either defend cities, you can build some towers in a tower defense type of way. You can send them in to kind of rush a base, and you've got some ones that are good at range attacks and ones that are good at breaking down structures. So it has these kind of the archetypes around what you would think with an RTS, but it does so within this Minecraft kind of skin and IP. And so it's not super deep, at least at this point. I say that with only being 2 hours in, but I totally thought I was going to play this for the podcast and kind of bounce off of it. And I find myself like, I want to see what's next. What's the next objective? Where do I go next? Like, do I start building things? I've started to build up some structures. I've started to build up upgrade things. Like, yeah, like I think one of the ways that I have always bounced off Minecraft is a lack of structure. And so having this gameplay, same way with Dragon Quest Builders, where it gave you some objectives in the Minecraft setting, or Minecraft Dungeon, where it basically was Diablo. But even then, it didn't have the same freedom because it was basically Diablo in a Minecraft setting. Like, there's a lot more kind of creativity here because of the fact that it is an RTS. Like, there are ways to approach different problems. So, I could see it being an enjoyable entry point within a genre that doesn't necessarily get a whole lot of love nowadays. I say this also looking at the agenda, knowing what your next game is.
So before we go into that, Paul's Gaming Live says it plays the same on keyboard and mouse. To be honest, you can't group. Minecraft Legends does the universe justice a bit like Halo Wars. So I think what he's saying is,
I was thinking of that. Like, the Halo War piece really felt a comparison here. Like, it is, it's a serviceable model, but yeah. What were you going to say?
No, but it sounds like you were about to say, but it has limitations.
Yeah, no, that's thanks, Paul, in the chat for that. I wonder if that is something that they'll add in, right? If that is something that can be patched in, if it is designed to be console first. And again, this is cross platforms. This is on not only Microsoft platforms. This is also on PlayStation and Nintendo, and I'm slowing down my cadence to say that just in case there are any regulators out there wondering if Microsoft is going to be a monopoly and limiting competition by putting their franchises only on one IP. But no, right? Like, this is Minecraft. It's out on everything. I could see why it may not have built-in PC controls, but it does feel... That's exactly the way I was thinking about it. Is like, oh, this feels kind of Halo Warsy, but a little closer in perspective. So,
do you think you mentioned something a little bit ago? Do you think, because you mentioned how Minecraft was problematic for you because it doesn't have structure, and so you like these kind of smaller bits that have the structure built around them? Do you think that a lot of these Minecraft variants are meant to be incubators, that they're meant to be kind of training wheels, like to get you into the Minecraft space, teach you some of the conventions, and then from there, hoping that maybe you'll then platform off back onto the mainstream Minecraft, where you will feel more comfortable?
I see how that logic makes sense, but I would almost say that the inverse is true. Like, Minecraft as itself, because it's being as open as it is, like, it is a great incubator for new players. Like, there is not a certain objective. Like, if you just want to go around and learn the controls and dig and, play with your, an older sibling playing with a younger sibling and helping them learn crafting materials and recipes, like, there's a way to do that without a whole lot of tension, because you can turn on creative mode. Like, I think that, I don't know. I mean, I've thought of this, like, are these type of Minecraft games ways to get the Minecraft IP to people that haven't grown up with Minecraft, right? Like, for my kids that have grown up with Minecraft, they don't really have any interest in this, because if they wanted to do this kind of game, they could have somebody host a separate server in Minecraft and play this, right? Like, there's ways within, because Minecraft is a platform to the same, to some aspects like Fortnite is, like, there's a lot more flexibility there. So I do wonder if it's the inverse of it, is people who are maybe Minecraft adjacent, that this is a place for them to engage in versus the entry level. Like, I would have thought the entry level piece for Minecraft Dungeon, because it is kind of a little more straightforward. But, looking at seeing how not only my kids play it, but how my kids' friends' younger siblings play Minecraft together, like, I can see that this functions in a very different way. Any other comments in the chat?
No other comments in the chat.
Okay, well, let's move from one RTS to another. This is a Chris Taylor one, isn't this? Supreme Commander. This is coming out of. Am I remembering this right? Like this is the sequel to Total Annihilation.
It is, and it is from one of my favorite studios, which unfortunately, as far as I know, I don't think is around anymore. Gas Powered Games. Gas Powered Games did this and then went on. I can't remember if Dungeon Siege came before this or after it. And then they were working on a Star Siege, which was like a Dungeon Siege, but like a science fiction variant. Man, it came out?
It came out. Not, I think maybe it wasn't, the IP came out eventually, maybe by that time that Chris Taylor had moved off. But yes, I think Supreme Commander came out in between Dungeon Siege 1 and 2, if I'm remembering it correctly.
Gotcha. A lot of nostalgia tonight. Supreme Commander, a 2007 game, as you mentioned, by Chris Taylor, Gas Powered Games, makes me think of Dungeon Siege. Like even Total Annihilation, we were talking about. I think I was talking about Supreme Commander, and somebody mentioned in my Twitter thread, yeah, I came to Supreme Commander from Total Annihilation. I didn't play Total Annihilation, but I played Total Annihilation Kingdoms, which was the fantasy variant of Total Annihilation, which I fell in love with. I wasn't even familiar with Chris Taylor and his games. Wasn't very familiar with RTSs at the time. I think I got it free with like a GPU. So Supreme Commander was a game that definitely hit the headlines, but I just never got around to playing it. I don't even remember why. It was definitely like, I think it was pretty sure it was PC Gamers, if not Game of the Year, RTS of the Year. And it's a mixed bag of how well it's aged and how well it hasn't aged well. One thing that's very nice is I was playing this game actually on the monitor that I'm on now, which is a I can't remember what this thing is, which is a 34-inch ultra wide monitor. So it has a 3440 by 1440p mode. Does play at 165 frames per second. Supreme Commander will actually let you sprawl the game onto a second screen and actually allow you to give affinity to that screen to I think like a subset of menus or a subset of the overall picture that you can see. I think what you can do is I think you can split it up to where, so Supreme Commander's big claim to fame was that you could scroll in and out, you could zoom in and out from the battlefield all the way out to the planetary view. And I think you can split across multiple screens to show like the planetary view and then the down to the battlefield view. One of the ways in which it doesn't age well is, at least, and I don't know if the resolution I had it out was the problem, or just the game's age is a problem. It's really jerky as you mouse up to the edges of the screen, which is supposed to cause the screen to pan around. And so I wound up having to use the middle mouse button to kind of drag scroll the screen around. The other thing is, and again, it may have been a matter of the resolution that I was at, but basically, I couldn't tell. I mean, you can't see any detail on any unit unless you're zoomed into like right on top of it. And there's no real, because the map is so big and covers so much range, there's really no good way to maintain tactical awareness of what's going on the map without zooming out significantly. So you zoom out to a point where you can't see any of your units on the screen. And so thank goodness you can control group units, because there's no way you could control them otherwise. So again, that may be a matter of me like spreading the game out to it's so incredibly high a resolution, which obviously didn't exist back in 2007. And so it doesn't quite meet the level of expectation that I had coming back to the game after such a long time. My fault, not the game's fault. It was probably state of the art in 2007. But whereas I go back and I play some other old RTSs and I feel like, oh yeah, this is, given that RTSs have kind of nosedived in terms of their degree of propagation across the gaming industry landscape, a lot of times you have to go back to it. Company of Heroes 3 is out this year and looks great, but it's kind of being panned by the Steam community, which, I trust Steam reviews. So I've chosen not to go in that direction because it's getting mixed reviews now. So there isn't a ton of great RTS games It's not the bumper crop that it used to be. Now, that being said, there's Supreme Commander 2, which I can always graduate to, and I'm pretty sure I have that in my Steam library as well. So I may not stick around too long in this kind of revisit to scratch at the surface and see what this game has to offer. I may just move on to Supreme Commander 2, but it's been an interesting nostalgic saunter back. Yeah.
What year was Supreme Commander 2?
I
didn't realize that there was a second one. I think I forgot about that totally.
There was definitely a second one, and I am pretty sure. I think it scored better overall. I think it was a little more up to snuff from a technical perspective.
2010. Oh yeah. Yep. Now I can picture this box. Yep. Yep.
So, but it's
I think it's an interesting piece of the hook of it was that scale, but so much of what RTSs are is you're drilled down in so that you are just controlling, at least a few screens worth of characters versus, a dozen screens worth of planet.
Yeah, I take it back. I was absolutely wrong. This game actually did not do as well as the previous version. It was a 77 of 100. Not as much so game of the year fodder as I think it scored a co-op game of the year in PC Gamer UK, but it doesn't look like it got the same accolades as its predecessor did.
So you're talking about Supreme Commander 2 versus Supreme Commander 1?
Yes.
Or are you talking about Supreme Commander versus Total Annihilation?
Supreme Commander 2 versus Supreme Commander. So Supreme Commander was an 86 of 100 on Metacritic, and it was a 77 of 100 on Metacritic. Got a little kind of squabbly award from PC Gamer UK, whereas it was a PC Gamer Editor's Choice with a score of 91%.
Nice. Yeah, gas-powered games. Wow. I remember picking up Total Annihilation. I had played Dungeon Siege, which turned me on to gas-powered games. And then picking up Total Annihilation after that, about learning about Chris Taylor. So yeah, that was Dungeon Siege 2 was 2005, 2006. And so by the time Supreme Commander comes out, you're ready through 2 Dungeon Sieges. So they've gone back to Supreme Commander. So
loved Dungeon Siege so much, and Dungeon Siege 2.
Yeah, the original one. That concept of playing the repetitiveness of an action, leveling up your skill, right? Whether you're melee or range. Yep. Very much so. And yes, Space Siege is the game that you were thinking about, which was released in 2008.
Yeah, so it actually came out between Supreme Commander and Supreme Commander 2, and was a turkey, getting a 60 out of 100 on Metacritic.
There we go. Now we have gone back through our gas-powered games history lesson. So one last game here to wrap it up for the night. Let's loop back around. We started this segment talking about sports games on Game Pass and EA games. And so I'm going to come back there and talk about EA's PGA Tour Road to the Masters. So this is EA's return to the golf game after, since 2015 with Rory McIlroy, right? We had PGA 2K, which is done by Golf Club Games, or by the developer, Half Brick, the developer of the Golf Club, which then was purchased by 2K, and 2K has had theirs now for a couple years. They added Tiger Woods into theirs this year, and Tiger Woods for multiple generations from PlayStation to PlayStation 2 into 360 and PlayStation 3 was part of EA's golf franchise. And so EA has been off for the last 8 years or so in golf and has come back now. This came out right around the time of the Masters, so the beginning of April. I had a chance to play it a couple weeks back when I was not on the show. And then just this past week, they came out with a patch that added the kind of the classic 3-click system. Not quite classic 3-click in terms of the bar, but very much, the meter and the 3 clicks, where before you were either using the left or the right stick as a downswing and a forward swing, which is similar to what the 2K PGA games work like as well. This game is pretty. It's really pretty. It is. Yeah, these are some nice golf courses. Looking at it in both in 1080p and then also in 4K, this game looks beautiful. I think it looks better than the 2K game. What I am struggling with is trying to determine if it plays better. And I think I'm struggling with that because I have 2 years of experience playing the 2K game, and so I've got this kind of muscle memory in terms of what it feels like as I'm doing my swing, what the green should feel like, how the ball runs up the fairway, how, are the greens fast, are they kind of, spongy, and so that's where I'm struggling here. I think the piece where I'm struggling the most is that the swing mechanic makes sense, but it is. I think so. If you're using the sticks, I'm trying to get this right because I don't want to sound judgmental. Like when I'm playing 2K, I swing down, I hit the bottom of the stick, and I push up. Like I'm not holding it, and if I hold it too long, it'll hook or fade my slice. So here in the EA game, I'm watching the characters swing. And so the meter of what the swing is actually tied into my character's backswing animation. So there is a marker at the top of my character's animation. And if I hit that, then I'll start my backswing and hit back at the 0 point, right? I mean, it's not all that different than the 3-click, except I'm doing a down and an up motion with my analog stick. What I'm finding is that the timing feels a little bit slow. And I can't tell if that's just me getting into the rhythm versus coming off another game, or if it is a little bit of a lag. And I found that playing with the 3-click, I'm having to stop it, what I think is before the center spot, in order for it to register at the center spot. So if I'm starting the 3-click, right, and then I click it again to come back down, I've got to hit that second one and the third one earlier than I would think before it, in order for it to hit. So that's where I feel like there's this little bit of lag. And it's not something that you can't account for because it just changes your timing. But the visual responsiveness to what you're physically doing feels different. I say that, and as we talked about earlier in the game with MLB the Show, right? The margin of error. Like if I am off by a little bit on the 3-click, because the 3-click is supposedly a little easier, it is much more punishing when you are not dead center when you finish. Like if I'm doing my swing, I get a little bit more margin of error of a straight shot where I'm a little bit off, and if my timing is off, I'm pulling that ball quite a bit. And so there's a lot of pretty course to look at, but I am still trying to learn my swing.
Now, you have access to this game through EA Play. Is that true?
Correct. Right. I have the 10-hour trial, so I've been kind of chipping away at it. I think all these criticisms aside, I really want to like this game because I like the way that it's laid out. Like I like the course selection of 30 real life courses that look amazing. There's a series of challenges here that, in addition to doing a career mode, the challenges kind of give you, they set up certain shots, or they work out in terms of your training to get you started. There's so much of me that wants to like this compared to 2K's piece, where yes, there's a career mode there as well, but I also have the ability to put some microtransaction money in to boost my character in the 2K mode, where here that's not the case. Like, I am moving through with my character as I'm leveling, as I'm going through I've only started the amateur tour because I'm still learning the swing, as I just spent a lot of time talking about the mechanics. But there's not the ability to, I don't have to buy additional balls like in 2K. There are pieces there where I want to like this because of the economic model that it is progressing, versus the comfort and the gameplay, in spite of the NBA 2K trappings of microtransactions that come with the 2K one.
So lots of sports tonight, lots of nostalgia. One of the things that I remember, EA Sports Golf, EA PGA Tour Golf, Sports Golf, whatever it was one of the first EA Sports games that I played on PC. And you're right. Its legacy has always been, it was always an amazingly beautiful game graphically. But also one of the earliest EA Sports games to really have a progression system in it, before that started getting incorporated in a lot of the games, where, you had to earn money to buy additional golf clubs to put in your bag, access to different golf balls of different materials, which would help with your shots. Definitely, again, soft place in my heart for this series as well. Glad to see it's back. Still waiting for, when is NCAA football coming back?
Supposedly it's supposed to be back next year.
Okay.
So we'll see what that looks like. We don't have any real hard and fast numbers there.
Yeah. And I've also heard rumors that EA Sports Big is potentially coming back. So, EA used to be the evil empire. I think Activision is earning that name more and more so these days. It's kind of nice to see, EA's, getting some winning of hearts and minds back with the Jedi series, Jedi Survivor series. So it's kind of nice to see, EA not back to where it used to be, but, back to, I don't know, feeling like a good company to be behind.
Right? Like, in some ways, it's strange to feel like people are cheering for EA after what it was a decade ago. And then, again, I say this as somebody who has complained about Madden on this podcast, but they are not in the same spot as some other companies, and so it's nice to see them kind of getting their feet back under them. And this week's launch of EA or Jedi Survivor seems like another great hit for Respawn. So. Yeah, we have spent a lot of time talking about a variety of games, plenty of nostalgia, both on a genre end. You were going to say something?
Last mention in the chat, Paul's Gaming Live, last shout out, which I think I missed when he dropped it. Legit play Halo Wars if you skip them and want a fun single player RTS. I don't think DBQ or I have skipped Halo Wars. I think we've both played Halo Wars, at least some of Halo Wars 1 and 2.
Yes, I as a Halo, lore person, I really enjoyed Halo Wars 1. I know where Halo Wars 2 lies in it and how but I did not play nearly as much of Halo Wars 2. So yeah, good shout out, Paul. You're right. That's exactly, those are good games to pick up, both from an RTS console piece and anytime there's a Microsoft sale, or if you're on Game Pass, you've already paid for them, so give them a try. We have talked about a whole bunch, and next week I'm sure we're going to talk about a whole bunch more. So next week we will be back here on the Enough to Keep Going podcast. Tao Master will be our host. I think it may be all three of us here that night. So we'll see what returns of nostalgia we have, or what new games that we have been playing. So, any other wrap up here, Game Logic, before we head out?
Nope, not at all.
All right. So for myself, DBQ Hams and Game Logic, this has been episode 287 for the week of April 23rd. Wow. Great discussion. Glad to be back. Glad to be playing. So for all of us here, to all of you out there, play the games you love. Love those you play with. And be kind to each other. Good night, everyone.